Oh, top of the Tuesday morning, everyone. I hope that you're having a nice start to your day. Here I am, once again, in the writing bunker. I am on deadline. I'm hanging out in my office, working on my next book. And I thought I would jump in just for a second to talk about the thing that I am writing about today, because maybe it will encourage you on this Tuesday, the 15th day of December. I hope you're having a nice day. I was I'm thinking in real time, working through how to put this down on paper, about the way that we tend to question our ability, our readiness, our having been equipped for the challenge of what we have been called into. And so one of the things that's a requirement, if you find yourself wanting to leave the harbor of security, of safety, of certainty, maybe you are finally making the decision to leave the struggle that you know, leave the stuck that you know for the unknown that will exist on the outside of leaving that harbor, of pushing away from the suffering that you maybe have become comfortable with. There is a thing that you have to do, and that is just absolutely 100% connect to the reality that you may not, in fact, feel 100% prepared for the kind of waters that you are charging toward. And yet, the decision to make that move toward those choppy waters is a thing you have to do, even if you don't know necessarily that you have what it takes yet to be successful. The way that we think about our ability, the way that we think about our capacity to do the things that we were placed on this planet to do, often act as a gate to allowing us, giving us permission to, affording us the willingness to push forward, or act as the shackles that will keep us connected to the dock, the harbor, the stuck, the struggle, the suffering that we are inside of. And so I was in the midst of writing. I was reading through a little bit of the notes that I wrote about Peter. Though this book is not necessarily a religious book necessarily, there's this story in the Bible about Peter having been called out onto the water by Jesus, right? And in this story from the Bible, Jesus says the word. It's very simple. He says, come. And in saying the word come to Peter, he has suggested in real time that he has been given the strength to actually walk on the water that he has been called out to. And there's something in the permission, in the mandate, in the suggestion that even if we individually struggle with the belief that we have the capacity to walk on water, that we have the belief in the capacity to do the hard thing, that we have the belief in our ability to traverse the crazy waters that will inevitably end up being introduced to us as we leave the harbor, as we push past the jetty, as we hit the choppy waters, we will find ourselves actually sinking into the water when we get too into our own head and too worried about what we believe our ability to actually be, right? As he was called onto the water, he was walking on that water when he was given the command to come, because in that initial declaration that he ought to, he just believed it, and he was able, because of that belief, to walk on top of the water. But when the wind picked up, as he stopped believing that he could because he got in his own head, he sank, right? He sank. And so there's something interesting in how we can sabotage the possibility for walking toward the thing that is destined for us because of the things that we have connected ourselves to stories-wise. The worries, insecurities, the lack of belief that we have in ourselves. And there is something that we have to separate in the stories that we have historically believed with the confidence we can have in being completely prepared for the thing that we are walking toward, even if we don't yet totally have every single thing that it's going to take. We have to have confidence that we can do it, not perfectly, but that we can do it, and in doing it, we'll learn how to do it well, even if we don't know how to do it well at the beginning. If you are waiting until you get to a place where you feel 100% confident in your capacity to do whatever the thing is that you're going to do, you'll never, ever end up going to do it. You just never do it. Because we're never going to, as humans, find a way to actually create the kind of confidence that might exist if we were to not just release ourselves in a certain sense to a higher power, to a belief beyond our own. Because it's when you can just have confidence that you will figure it out as you go, that you'll actually have the belief, the courage, the willingness to walk out into an unknown space and test what it is that you have and how the things that you already have create for you exactly what you need. God does not call people who are already completely and totally ready, right? He doesn't call people that have it all together. He doesn't call people necessarily that are completely figured out, right? It's something that happens to any of us, to all of us, that in faith, in believing that we will figure it out as we go, that we will actually, in taking that step of faith, probably stumble, probably find that we don't have it completely figured out. But those learnings, those are the learnings that are actually going to find us becoming the bigger, better version of ourselves, that are going to actually have us take a step and maybe even in the mistake, understand, oh, we still have something that we have to go through, but that's okay, right? You may not feel like you are qualified yet for the audacity of the dream that you are walking toward. But I truly believe that God does not call the qualified, that God qualifies the called. That there is something in just being called into the mission that already gives you the permission, the worthiness, the readiness to handle whatever ends up being thrown in your way. And yeah, it's going to be scary. And yeah, you're going to struggle. And yeah, you're going to probably fall down. But you can't wait until you find a confidence in yourself every single time. Because there are so many stories that we have attached ourselves to that would, not allow us the permission to move forward, that would not allow us the belief in ourselves. And so we just have to, even though we may have some insecurity, even though we're likely to fail, even though we don't know for sure that we can walk on that stinking water, if we've heard the call to come, we got to come. We got to just take a step. And even in the midst of stumbling and failing and getting back up and learning through the resilience of perseverance, that's how we ultimately become who we're meant to become. So if you're right now in any way feeling stuck, you're struggling, if you're suffering in any way, I do believe with 100% certainty that the decision to leave the suffering that you know for the unknown that exists outside of that suffering is worth the journey, even though it's scary. And you're going to have to do it scared. You're going to have to do it even though sometimes you're going to have to depend on a confidence that comes from something outside of you. But I do believe as you're willing to make that first step, and then a second step, and then a third step, you will find your footing. You're going to find a way to develop the confidence because of a willingness to take the step. If you are someone who's like, you know what, I'm just going to wait until I develop enough competency. I'm going to wait until I have enough experience. I'm going to wait until all the things line up. I'm going to wait until the world works perfectly. I don't know that it's ever going to work that way, right? You're going to have to take a step into something that you don't know. And at a certain point, you are going to have to believe that you are perfectly qualified, though you don't necessarily have all the qualifications. Right? It's really interesting as a person who, in real time, I'm trying my best to, in being an author, or being a coach or being someone who has a very, very strange job on the internet. Afford people as much of a resource or tools that I possibly can. And there are plenty of times when, because of my acknowledgement of me being awesome, but also not having it all together, me not having a string of consecutive fantastic days in a row, I'm wondering if maybe I have the qualifications to be an author, to be a coach, to be whatever. And I was having this conversation with my therapist this last week, and I said, man, I have these voices, like anyone has voices in my head, that have me questioning if I have the qualifications to be someone who can try and encourage other people, because I am myself still trying to figure things out. And he said something that was just so simple, and I want you to hear this. He said, do you ever think, Dave, that maybe because you're still figuring things out, because you don't have it all together, because you are trying in real time to put all the pieces in a way that actually makes sense, that maybe you are more equipped to be a coach, to be an author, to be someone who connects with people, because of the recognition of the imperfection that exists inside of you as a person trying to bring light into this world? And a light switch flipped. I was like, wow, maybe instead of wondering if I have the competency or the skills or have it all together or have figured it all out in a way that might actually afford other people breakthrough, maybe by recognizing that I myself am exactly like you who is listening right now, that I am also trying to figure it out. Maybe that perfectly equips me to try and have a conversation about how to try and make a step toward a bigger, better version of myself. And I'd encourage you to think of it through that lens as well. You don't have it all together. Good news. We are in the same boat. But maybe not having it all together, maybe the fact that we are pursuing better, that we're trying to, against the narrative that exists inside of our head, think a little bit differently about how the conditions of our soul, of our mind, of the work that we're doing, though it's imperfect, but we're trying, is what equips us to be perfect as the person that we're attempting to try and be. I'm making mistakes every single day. I'm trying as hard as I possibly can every single day. And yet, I'll tell you what, it's not ideal. I don't, have it, all together. And in not having it all together, that maybe makes me a little bit of an interesting kind of teacher, but maybe a teacher that can connect with people in a way that other people can't. All right, I'm gonna lean right into that. And maybe that's the case for you too, right? If you, in some weird world where the optics of the internet or perfectionism generally, or the way that, you'd hope to be a certain way because of your belief that you may have in certain people being a certain way, have made you believe that you have to wait until you check a certain number of boxes until you're able to afford light to other people. I'm going to just tell you, I think that's a lie. I think it's a lie from the devil. And I would encourage you to ask a different question. Is there possibly a way that you, in exactly the state that you're in exactly this kind of struggle that you're working through and the suffering that you're experiencing, that maybe you, because of the experience of your experience, could connect to other people in a way that normalizes it? That could maybe connect to other people in a way that, in normalizing it, makes them feel less alone, encourages them to reach the way that you're reaching, all of those things. It's like the world is hard, and suffering is not an indictment for any of us in not being good people. It's just a reflection of our humanity. And so if in any way you thinking that you have to come completely out of suffering, if you think you have to have it all together, if you think you have to figure it all out before you can bring your light to this world, that's a lie. Let that go. The world needs your gifts, and your gifts may be just acknowledging right where you're at, the things that you're working through, the struggle that you're inside of, the insecurity that you're trying to grapple with. I have, plenty of those things. But I've just tried to rewire myself in owning those things in a way that may afford any of you, all of us, an attempt at solidarity, an attempt at feeling a little more normal for processing everything as a collective. And in the hope that maybe it normalizes it, it makes it feel okay for you to walk out on that water and believe that you can, even if you don't necessarily feel completely qualified to do it. I'm gonna do it. And guess what? Yes, grapple at times with feeling like I have been perfectly qualified for it. But I keep coming back to this question of, is there the possibility that I have been perfectly qualified to do the work that I'm doing because of the things that I am working through, because of the struggle that I have, because of it being imperfect and a work in progress? And I think the answer is yes. And I think the answer is yes as much for me as it is for you. So anyway, if you are waiting for all the conditions to line up perfectly, do not wait. They are probably never going to completely line up the way that you would hope. Instead, I want to encourage you to take a step forward anyway. I want you to hear the call of come, as in come out on this water. And that the implication, the suggestion of that call already pre-qualifies you as being worthy of walking on that water, of pushing away from the harbor, of getting outside of the jetty, because it's part of what is actually a part of your destiny. It's part of what you're meant to be in this world. We often, too often, as humans, we just stay so comfortable in the suffering that we know. And man, there is a different life that exists. There is a different world that exists. And as much as it is unfamiliar and it is scary and it can be daunting to have to charge towards the choppy waters, go do it anyway. Because the suffering that you are inside of is a thing that you deserve to be away from. And you can be. It's just a choice that you're going to have to make to do it scared and push into something that's unknown, knowing, just believing that that unknown is going to provide for you something that is beautiful and fulfilling and satisfying and brings out in some kind of way the purpose for why you've been placed on this planet. All right, I hope you have a fantastic Tuesday. I got to go back to writing.